And in many programs to come, we will bring you news, entertainment, and helpful information to open your minds, and we'll let you be the judge. There is help, there is support, and there are answers. Now get ready for another exciting show.
Yesterday, for further consultations with his government, he returned to the Vienna. This is Ed Fletcher in Vienna.
Take two, Q Howard.
I don't have to tell you things are bad.
Have you and your family been destroyed by Family and Children's Services?
Everybody knows things are bad.
A young Sydney family claims it's being terrorised by police and welfare authorities because of neighbourhood gossip. Mum and Dad are in hiding tonight, fearing their baby son will be taken away.
We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living room.
They are supposed to help kids who need it the most, but instead officials say they stole from the kids. Investigators arrested 2 ACS workers and 2 foster care agency workers and charged them with taking more than $500,000 meant to help needy children. Eyewitness News reporter Tim Fleischer is live in Lower Manhattan with the details. Tim?
Well, Joe, 3 of the 4 people charged with embezzlement in this case are facing arraignment here at Federal District Court this afternoon in what is an enormously embarrassing situation for ACS. This embattled agency looking out for the best interest of children is once again being called into question. Reaching into the highest levels of the Administration for Children's Services, allegedly involving not 1 but 2 top officials. This was a scheme, federal investigators reveal,
for defrauding the city of hundreds of thousands of dollars intended for the care of the city's most vulnerable adopted and foster children.
Prosecutors accuse Nigel Osarenko and Latham Duncan, top officials in ACS's Payment Services Department, along with an official here at Concord Family Services, a Brooklyn adoption agency, and one of its contractors, in what they describe as 2 elaborate schemes in which they allegedly
stole hundreds of thousands of dollars intended for this program through the 2 fraudulent schemes.
Most disturbing, though, investigators reveal, is what they describe as the lack of checks and balances at ACS needed to oversee this money's disbursement.
They were essentially their own internal control and quality assurance and could do too much singly with respect to the authorization of payments.
In the second alleged scheme, a check for $375,000 was issued to a contractor at the Brooklyn Adoption Agency for fictitious computer services.
No services, no products are provided. It's a completely fraudulent billing.
That contractor, Philbert Gorick, investigators claim, bought this and another high-priced car with that money and also paid for an apartment. ACS Commissioner John Mattingly, responding in part, is disappointed in employees who were illegally manipulating the finance checks and balances in the adoption subsidy system to profit financially on their own behalf. Department of Investigation Commissioner Rose Gill Hearn said she is now ready to see serious corrections made.
So these cases obviously reflect the fact that ACS's cash disbursement unit and payment services department need an overhaul.
Well, Concord Family Services had no comment, but ACS at this point is, now that the ACS officials have been arrested, the Department of Investigation says they can now go in and look deeper into the files to see if this case goes beyond what they already know. Reporting live in Lower Manhattan, Tim Fleischer, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad.
A foster mother who exploited and abused her disabled children was sent to federal prison today.
One of our victims is still missing after 8 years, and the woman the judge called diabolical is not saying what happened to him. Jonathan Dienst was in court for what some lawyers are calling one of the worst child abuse cases they've ever seen. Jonathan?
Chuck, she admits ripping off $1.6 million from taxpayers, money she was supposed to use to care for severely disabled children. Instead, she allegedly abused and tortured them for years. And among the haunting questions asked in court today, whatever happened to one of the children who was allegedly missing? At federal court, the allegations of torture and abuse at the hands of 63-year-old Judith Leakin were unspeakable. Autistic children allegedly starved, burned, kept captive. And then, Whatever happened to little Mark Shane, who moved with her from Queens to this Florida home?
He was taken by Judith Leakin somewhere. We don't know if he died. We don't know what happened to him, and no one else knows. And until we know what happened to Mark Shane, unfortunately, justice will not be served.
Authorities are still looking for the missing Mark Shane, who would be 19 today, severely disabled. He vanished back in 2000. Leakin's lawyer wasn't taking questions about what happened to him.
I'm not commenting on that.
In court, Judge Richard Berman, so angered by Leakin and her foster scam, stealing tax dollars meant for 11 disabled children in her care, that he threw the book at her. 11 years on the fraud counts, more than the 8 years prosecutors recommended. Quote, "It was a diabolical scheme. These children in her care suffered from physical and mental disabilities," he said. In court, Leakin sobbed as she admitted the fraud, but denied torturing any of the children. Quote, "I'm sorry. I love my children, and I miss them." Florida authorities will soon prosecute her on the abuse counts. Judge Berman called for the city to adopt immediate reforms to protect foster kids, mandatory fingerprinting, background and alias checks, and repeat home visits for foster parents getting cash subsidies. City officials say some of those reforms are already in place, but the Department of Investigations commissioner agrees with the judge and is also demanding tougher reforms.
Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past rooted in pain, I rise. A black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak miraculously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the hope and the dream of the slave. And so